Date, I am battling cancer. I'm lesbian, but I have realized I love my male best friend of 25 years. So tonight I told James the first love him. I told him everything. He came into my room this evening like he always does. Greeted me, hello, how's my amumu doing today? I told him I was doing well. He told me I looked beautiful, which is not true, but it still felt so sincere. Then he started unpacking the stuff he brought me today. I asked him to stop and just come sit with me because I wanted to talk to him. He nodded and came and sat down next to me. What's up? He asked. It took me a bit to gather myself. I kept getting distracted by his eyes. How he looks at me sometimes, I don't know how to describe it. I told him I love you, and he just kind of laughed and touched my hand before casually responding, oh, I know that. I love you too. In retrospect, this wasn't the best way to start, I guess, since we've said that enough, with a different understanding that he didn't get what was happening. He started to get up again to unpack the snacks, and I grabbed his arm and asked him to let me finish. He looked confused, but he nodded and sat back down. And then I did it. I told him everything. I told him about all the times in the past I'd thought about just marrying him despite my romantic interests. I told him my favorite memories of him and how they make me feel. I told him he'd always been my best friend and the person I trusted the most. I told him I made a mistake and I should have chosen him. He's the face I see when I think about feeling loved, the embrace I feel when I think about being safe. It doesn't matter what we do. If we're together, I'm happy, and he's the only thing I want for the rest of my life. He basically froze. He said nothing, just looked at me as I spilled everything. I am not sure he even blinked. When I finished and looked up at him, he was sitting there like a statue with his mouth slightly open. Still enough it was like he forgot to breathe. James always knows what to say, so this was a little unnerving to me. I started to ask him if everything was alright, but before I could finish, his expression broke. He exhaled into a weak but incredibly tender, quivering smile, and he just reached out and pulled me into a hug. I buried my head in his chest and his arms just wrapped around me. I just melted into him. He was so gentle. It felt so easy. It felt so right. Then he started crying, and then I started crying. He's been coming here through 2 years of cancer treatment and never seen him cry till now. He held me for a while, but however long it wasn't long enough. He still hadn't actually said a single word since I finished talking, but I guess he didn't really need to. Then he finally answered my question with, now it is. When he finally pulled away, his face was red from crying, but he just looked so happy. He looked at me for a bit. It was kinda cute because he had a little trouble maintaining eye contact, which he usually doesn't. He was like a little boy again. Then he finally looked right at me and he just said, you are the only thing I've ever wanted. Then I started crying again and he started crying again, and he pulled me to him and held me again. I wish it never ended. He kissed me. It felt easy, not scary at all, and just right. He asked me if it lived up to my daydreams, and I chuckled and said yes. Then he said, I'm not so sure myself. I think I need more data, and kissed me again. Then after that we started talking, and I guess he told me everything too. He said he'd loved me since we were little kids. Told me he still has every drawing, letter and craft I ever made for him in a safe that he took with him to college and has taken everywhere he's ever lived. We talked about the day I came out as gay to him, and how he'd figured it out earlier, but he struggled to accept it for months in secret because he had lived his entire life up to that point assuming we would be a family and wanting nothing else. He told me he thought about our last night before college all the time, and he kept hoping that entire night I'd say something before he left, because then he'd have transferred colleges to stay with me. Told me he actually took a very long way home just to prolong the time when we were holding hands and I was sleeping on his shoulder, and that it was to this day his favorite memory. Then he looked at me with those piercing green eyes and said, for me, there has never been anyone else. He loved once and then struggled through a bunch of rebounds, and even though he had learned to bury it and move on with life and was happy in our friendship, his heart had only ever belonged to me. Honestly, I guess I should have known this, but I was flustered. I joked that he should enter the Olympics as a torch carrier, and he said they'd never have a chance. I'm the greatest there ever was. We sat and talked and reminisced some more, mostly about when we were kids. I found out some things I never knew because he avoided telling me how romantic some things were for him after I came out, but I also kinda realized. I think they felt romantic to me too. Then he sang me some of our songs. We had another embrace and another kiss. Both still felt divine. I can't wait to have my hair back again so he can pet it like he used to when we were kids. Then I brought up the intimacy question, and it was the cutest thing ever. I barely got to say anything before he started tripping over himself like, look, I don't even care. I don't need that. If we need mistresses or something we can do that, it doesn't bother me. I just want to wake up with you every day. Which was sweet, but then I told him that even though I didn't know how that would go, I wanted to try with him anyway when I got better, and oh my god, he turned tomato red and could barely look at me. Literally could not even manage to form a sentence in response, just mumbled incoherently before managing to get out, okay, if you're sure. This man has been married and had 6 girlfriends, but he completely just falls all over himself at the thought. God, it was adorable. This is the only thing I'm still a little worried about, but I do want to try. I mean, I like the kissing, which I thought was completely impossible, and I know that if it doesn't turn out well it won't ruin anything and we'll still be together and just figure something else out for that one need. Then we talked about the cancer. He is so sure I'm gonna make it. It's so touching. It took a little while to get him to take the other possibility seriously. When I finally did and I told him that it's the reason I didn't tell him sooner, he held my hand and told me that if that happens, he'd be okay because he'll always know that he was one of the lucky ones because he was mine. Jesus Christ, I almost lost it. Then he said if we don't have that much time left, we better make sure every minute counts. I said that's pretty hard to do in a hospital, and he replied, what do you mean? We're both here and that makes this the best place on earth. Dear God, what did I do to deserve this man? I teared up again and he held me one last time. Then the doctors came in. He kissed me goodnight. We both said I love you, but it felt so different. It's never felt so good to say or hear those words. Then he smiled at me and left. I was so excited, the first thing I did was call mom and she was just ecstatic. I think she might be happier than me, which is saying something. As soon as I told her what happened and that James and I are together, she just started crying and talking about what a good boy he is, how she just knew this would happen and that she can rest easy now because she knows I will always be loved and taken care of. Plenty of her destiny talk, which usually gets on my nerves, but honestly I was so happy tonight. I'm on board. Maybe it was destiny. I guess sometimes mom really does know best. I feel like a teenager again. I never thought I'd feel this way again in my life. I never even imagined if I did it would be for a man. God, I love him so much. Now I can't understand what I was ever worried about or why I didn't do this years ago.